everyone, and welcome to a season finale spoiler review for Peacemaker from the
Geek
Buddies!
Hey! The season, talk about the season finale and the last few episodes kind of connected to the season finale overall. We're excited to jump into it. Let's introduce ourselves first. I am the Outlaw John Rocha, writer, producer, and host here on the Geek Buddies and the Outlaw Nation. Michael.
I am Michael Vogel, writer and producer of animated TV shows and movies.
Shannon.
And this is Shannon McClung. I'm an animation writer and a television actor where you may have seen me on Brooklyn Nine-Nine, The Gold.
HBO Max, then come back and join us. And before we jump into it, want to give some love to the people who are sponsoring us and powering us. That is Carbon Health. Thank you so much. Carbon Health, a fantastic place that offers healthcare to everybody. That's what they believe in. They have 90 clinics in 14 states, virtual care in 24 states. So anything you need to get handled, if there's a clinic or a virtual care ability there for you in your state, they will take care of you. Sometimes in certain states, you even get day of appointments, which is really hard to get nowadays with everybody running to the doctor. They're offering testing for COVID, testing if you're going overseas, and they just want to make healthcare accessible to everyone. So head on over there to carbonhealth.com. And let me tell you something, after this battle, this final battle in this finale, quite a few people probably could have used Carbon Healthcare, including the miraculous healing abilities of Harcourt and Vigilante, gentlemen, don't you think?
I mean, look, they ended up in a hospital, but I think they would have had a lot better care with Carbon Health. So
nice. Well said.
Yeah, and I would be curious to know the Carbon Health's plan if an intergalactic butterfly invades your body through your mouth and takes over.
Yeah.
What's the plan there?
Antibiotics.
Sounds like some of my dates in my 20s. Anyway, all right, so we're going to jump into the season finale here. It's called It's Cow or Never, which is, I think, is a perfect time to drop this because we had Baz Luhrmann's Elvis trailer drop today, and It's Cow or Never is a version of It's Now or Never, which is one of the famous Elvis songs. Of course, that phrase has been around before, but that was one of the famous Elvis songs. So I like the kind of synergy of that overall. Also, I think a Warner Brothers Pictures as well, so it kind of connects. So we're going to jump into all of this and break it all down for you for sure. But let's get the overall thoughts first. Mike, let's start with you. Overall thoughts in this finale and how we got here over these last 4 episodes.
I mean, overall, I think this is great. I think Peacemaker is absolutely an amazing show. I think James Gunn knocked it out of the park. I think it is one of the best pieces of entertainment as part of the DC cinematic universe. And I think, look, I think what they did with this show, I think they did more successfully with Peacemaker than Book of Boba Fett did with Boba Fett. I think that both of these shows dealt with someone who, up until this point when the show starts, is more or less a villain, and took them on an arc to deepen our understanding of them, deepen our emotional connection to them, and put them in a different place at the end. And I think we got to the end of Book of Boba Fett, and I think we had a lot of questions. And again, I think I said in our review of Book of Boba Fett, I'm happy where we ended up. I'm excited to see where they go with Boba Fett, but I think it was a little bit of confusion on how we got there. And I think with Peacemaker, James Gunn went in there and said, this is who this character is. We're going to reveal why he is the way he is. We're going to break him down. We're going to build him back up again. And I think they kind of made us fall in love with him. So I think they absolutely knocked this thing out of the park.
Yeah, Shannon, I mean, what a season finale here. As Mike just pointed out, they kept the vibe, the rhythm, and the feel of the first 7 episodes into this episode. They did not change the point of view. They didn't all of a sudden become this melodramatic finale or this super sympathetic finale. Very much kept the vibe overall, yet still managed to tug at heartstrings, yet still managed to wrap up some stuff like Aquaman sleeping with fishes. All these kinds of things happened here throughout this finale. And yes, like Mike said, some people got a great evolution, kind of like a caterpillar to a butterfly. They evolved as people here. How did you feel, except for Vigilante, of course? How did you feel about this finale and the last few episodes overall?
I mean, I thought it was outstanding, and something that James Gunn is very good at, and it's easy to forget if we haven't just seen one of his films, like one of the Guardians films or the Suicide Squad to a lesser degree, is his ability to connect broad comedy to heart. And that's something that his writing that he did exceptionally well. I mean, there's a joke, I believe it was in the first episode, a joke that I was kind of like, meh, it didn't really land. But the way they were able to keep it going and actually connect it to a very big sort of vulnerable character moment, I was like, oh my gosh, like that, I was wrong. Like looking at it, taking a step back, it's like that. He did exactly what he set out to do with that. And John Cena is not a performer that I've always held in the highest regard. I do think some of this comedy work has been pretty good. I haven't loved his more serious moments. Like even like Bumblebee, I like when he was being funny, I liked him. When he had to kind of like be a hard ass, I was like, man, I don't really believe this. He had some great dramatic moments in this. I mean, we already knew that he could do comedy, but the way that, like James Gunn, he was able to connect the heart to the comedy, it was really, really impressive. And it seems like John Cena could be on the same path that The Rock and Dave Bautista have traveled on before him.
Yeah, certainly. And that seems to be what you take out of this first season, I would think so. And especially this finale is he's really come into his own as an actor with James Gunn directing him. It may be a director situation where they both kind of work together so well. And Cena trusts him to take him to the places he has to go emotionally for a character like Christopher Smith, like Peacemaker. So I like that kind of combo with both of them, and we'll see if this yields something more for John Cena down the road. Something we just saw, for those of you who watch Reacher, you saw a big dude. Could he emote and convey emotion as strongly as Cena? I would say no. So the fact that you've got a guy like this who can go to these places in a believable way where you're not straining to give him the benefit of the doubt, but you're being blown away by this guy, that speaks volumes about what he was able to do in this show, what James Gunn got out of him for this show. And they just approved a season 2. And I was reading an interview with James Gunn here, I think in Deadline, and he said, we wanted to wait. John and I wanted to wait until we kind of cracked the story for season 2 before we committed to coming back. Now, how much of that is true or not, I don't know. But the fact that the timing, the drop in the season 2 announcement right when the finale of season 1 drops, you got to figure that they had that settled for a little bit. So it may be true that they needed to work it out. And John needed to feel comfortable coming back to reprise this role, and that there was a story to tell here that was worth it to continue doing a season 2. And I think a lot of us, or maybe all of us, are happy that a season 2 is coming. And let's jump into this. And I'll go back to you, Michael. John Cena as Christopher Smith, what he's been able to do. Coming into this finale, he shot his father in the head, committing patricide. Adebayo, he finds out that Adebayo is the one that hid the diary and kind of embarrassed him. He's changing his mind on Economos. His connection with Harcourt is growing more and more. Vigilante's even more of a sycophant for him, so he's figuring all that out. And now he's got to walk into this finale here and deal with the ramifications of the butterflies and somehow figure out how to do all this with only 4 or 5 helmets, eagerly, and 3 or 4 or 4 other people. What was your impression of him throughout this finale, how he handled himself, and how they played the storyline out with him over the last few episodes?
Well, I think what I'm most impressed about with the way that Cena is playing Chris Smith and the way that James Gunn wrote him is that, like, if you dive into therapy, you learn that, like, people have a traumatic event early in their lives, and oftentimes when they have a traumatic event, they don't mature beyond that in some way. They kind of a part of them stays stuck there. So, like, Peacemaker, when we saw him in the Suicide Squad, was kind of like a giant kid, kind of an infantile character, and we all kind of laughed at him and thought he was dumb. And at the beginning of the show, when we pick up with him, that's who he is. But in the back half of the season, we see with him and Vigilante, like, the reason these two get along is they act like they're 10-year-olds.
Yeah, they're still like back in high school or middle school or something. Yeah.
I mean, I would say middle. I mean, well, what's interesting is the more that they reveal about Peacemaker's past, and you see the age that Peacemaker is at when his brother dies, and then you look at him and the way he acts and the jokes he makes and the way he gets upset about things. And to Shannon's point, I think this is where the comedy and the heart do kind of come together. This is a show about 2 dudes in superhero costumes that are acting like pre-adolescent kids. And that's really funny. But when you find out why he kind of hasn't progressed but beyond that point, and you kind of see how this is just a hurt little kid who's dealing with like a shitty father and the death of a brother and just never matured beyond that, like is stuck at that point in his life, you still get all the fart jokes and all the funny things he says, but all of a sudden it's kind of tinged with a whole lot of sadness. And to sort of have this really kind of sad portrayal of this character who's sort of stuck at this point in his life, surrounded by the batshit craziest stuff in the world, and to balance that out, and the fact that they managed to have this really interesting character piece that really delved into this character that most people, even hardcore DC fans, don't necessarily care a lot about, and actually made us all care about him so much that I'm thrilled that there's a season 2, and to a lesser degree, all the other characters. You have all these characters who thought when we saw Harcourt and Economos in the Suicide Squad that any of us would really give a shit about them one way or the other.
Good point.
And even at the beginning of the season, you're kind of like, yeah, okay, that's the characters from the Suicide Squad. I don't really know how I feel about them.